could afford this, so there began talks of a merger. On June 8, 1966, the AFL and the NFL officially merged. Under the merger agreement, the new league would be named the NFL. Another thing in the agreement was teams would be split up into two conferences. These conferences are still known today as the AFC and the NFC.
Now that we've talked about the NFL before the Super Bowl, let's talk about the NFL from the start of the Super Bowl era to present day.
The first Super Bowl was played in 1967 between the Packers and the Chiefs. The Packers were heavily favored to win because they were from the NFC, which had more talented players, being it was close to the date of the merger. The Packers beat the Chiefs 35-10 in the first Super Bowl, winning. Around this time as well, the Atlanta Falcons and Miami Dolphins were added as teams to the NFL, making a total of 28 teams now.
Jim Brown was part of one of the first NFL dynasties. According to Jesse Washington, a senior writer for 14 years for The Undefeated, stated on June 2nd, 2017, that Brown rushed for 12,312 rushing yards in his career and had a total of 106 touchdowns. Brown led the Cleveland Browns to many Super Bowls during his career. During Brown's career, he had 3 MVP titles to his name. At the end of Brown's career, he decided he wanted to pursue a career in acting, so he ended his NFL career.
Nathan Rott, a 14-year writer for NPR, wrote on March 21st, 2015, that Chuck Benedict marked the end of the two-way player era. He was the last player to play both offense and defense for a team, as he played 14 years with the Philadelphia Eagles. He played center and linebacker for them and was an 8-time Pro Bowler. And with the Eagles, he won 2 Super Bowls. In the second Super Bowl, he made the game-saving tackle to stop the touchdown that would put the opposing team up. He also once tackled a player so hard that the player was out of play for the next 18 months of his career. After his retirement, the Philadelphia Eagles retired Chuck's number, and he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1967.
The NFL during the 1970s presented us two of the biggest powerhouses ever. These teams included the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers. These two teams combined for a total of 5 Super Bowls in this one decade. Another successful team during this decade were the Minnesota Vikings. And when I mean successful, I mean making it to the Super Bowl. The Vikings made it to 4 Super Bowls, but sadly lost all 4 of them. In 1972, the NFL introduced the first ever undefeated season. The Miami Dolphins went through the whole regular season, the whole playoffs, and even the Super Bowl and won every single game.
During the 1970s, the NFL introduced many new rule changes. The first of these was in 1970, when the NFL put names on the back of the jerseys. This made players much more recognizable on the field. In 1974, they moved the goalposts from the goal line to the back of the end zone. This made it so that players were not able to run into the goalposts when running into a touchdown. In 1978, the playoff formatting was changed. They added 2 different wildcard teams. This made playoffs more exciting. In 1979, the fumble rule was created so that players could not intentionally fumble the ball out of bounds.
Mean Joe Green, arguably one of the greatest defensive tackles to ever play the game of football, played in the 1970s. Terrence Moore, who has been covering professional sports for 41 years, wrote an article for Forbes on October 25, 2018. Mean Joe Green was a 10-time Pro Bowler in his 13 seasons with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He got the nickname Mean Joe Green because in one game, he kicked a player in the groin, punched another one in the face, and spit in the quarterback's face. He's a pretty interesting guy if you ask me.
John Madden is considered one of the greatest coaches of all time. He led the Oakland Raiders to their first Super Bowl in 1977. According to Adam Augustin from Britannica, who's been writing for 11 years, stated on April 11, 2019, that in Madden's career, he had a record of 112, 39, and 7, which is one of the most winningest coaches of all time. After Madden was done coaching, he decided he wanted to commentate on NFL games. He was such a good commentator that they made a video game after him called Madden NFL, which is still around today and played by millions of people.
The NFL during the 1980s really started to boom. Super Bowls were now getting 80 million views per game. This was due to the San Francisco 49er dynasty during this decade. The Niners made it to 5 Super Bowls in this one decade. One of the most impactful players on this team was Jerry Rice. Bob Carter, a 10-year writer for ESPN, in an ESPN Classic article on June 4, 2014, tells that Rice is statistically one of the best receivers of all time. He leads the NFL in receiving yards, completions, and touchdowns. His quarterback, Joe Montana, and him are known as probably one of the best dynamic duos ever to play the game of football.
Walter Payton was the running back for Chicago Bears in 1985. Chris Chase, 9-year writer for USA Today, wrote an article on October 1st, 2015. The Walter Payton Man of the Year Award is named after Walter Payton himself and is given to one NFL player each year who shows outstanding commitment and service towards communities in the United States. Walter Payton himself was a charitable man. You could tell this because the award was named after him.
The 1990s were a very interesting time for the NFL. In 1993, the Broncos came up with something known as a franchise tag. A franchise tag is something that a team has to use on one of their unrestricted free agents to keep them on their team for one more year. An unrestricted free agent is someone whose contract has expired with that team, and they are free to sign wherever they would like. Another huge story during the 1990s, as stated by Lene O'Neill, a senior writer for 8 years with The Undefeated, in an article on July 21st, 2017 states, when the former Buffalo Bills running back O.J.